Committee, and this is July 29th, 2010. We are in room 1050 of the Los Angeles City Hall. And Mr. CLA, I would like to start with, let me make a couple of opening remarks, then we'll start with the first item. Just to set the stage, I've requested to assert a jurisdiction on 5 items that the DWP board approved on July the 22nd. Staff discussion of these items at the board meeting were limited and needed to be more fully vetted, in my opinion. Many of these high-dollar contracts have come through the E2 committee over the past few years, and I don't feel that council and our constituents understand what these contracts have accomplished. In light of what I've been pushing for with the DWP and improving public outreach and transparency, I'm going to ask for additional details on the 5 contracts on the agenda today. Another issue that I will raise today is one where the Department of Water and Power staff chose to agendize these items. Now, when DWP is scheduling these items, and this is just a word of advice so that we can try to work collaboratively and work more efficiently together in the future, to the DWP staff, you need to take into consideration that the City Council may assert jurisdiction on any one of these items on the board agenda. This requires that DWP take into account the 21 days that Council has to act when asserting jurisdiction. Clearly, neither the board nor staff took this into account for items D and E. First thing I will do is start with item D, but before I do that, why don't I just let, we only have 2 speaker cards, so why don't we let Wayne Spindler and Dr. Williams come to the table and make their comments, and then we'll get right into it.
Wayne speaking. Is this for the agenda item or for the?
Just, you made cards, so why don't I let you speak on item 1? We'll go to item 1 first.
Okay. Item 1. Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. My primary concern is item 1E. This is a huge project, and to have, I say, especially the take or pay provisions of it to be enforced, that is, we are committing ourselves to a large amount of money and a large amount of use. In the take or pay conditions, they also include the transmission, which is not an agenda item within the context of your purview right now, I believe. So as a generating source, that's one thing. But all generating sources that are not within the LA area have to be transmitted. And these are related directly to the amount of power that we're going to take. So I'd highly recommend that the DWP provide what sort of transmission systems are going to be used to support these generating facilities at a distance from LA City and the existing transmission line. $2 billion worth? Wow, it seems to be a lot. There's also a matter as far as the public comment concerned. The file reports as provided on the internet are not consistent with the items on the agenda. It relates to real estate, and that might be an appropriate issue to cover within this. However, it has no relevance to the agenda item. Therefore, we were not privy to the especially 1E file report before the meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Spindler.
Thank you. I notice we have only 1 member of the committee here. There's supposed to be 5. Tony Cardenas, Richard Alarcon, Paul Koretz, Paul Krikorian, they're not here. So how can you convene a meeting when you don't have a quorum? You called a special meeting. Obviously, this is an off-schedule meeting, and this has been going on all the way through the whole year, where there's a series of meetings at DWP or special meetings being called on short notice. Again, this is short notice, and we only have one member of the committee. Where are the other people? If it's this important to drag out all of the people from DWP, there's people here that, obviously got a lot to do, then why are you calling this in when only one person shows up to the meeting? If it wasn't that important to come to it, they're not here, then why are you doing this? It's probably not that important, and you're only calling for these 5 items. Earlier, when the $73 million wasn't transferred, a number of their contracts from the DWP were called and jurisdiction was asserted. I think, looking at this, especially items B and C, you're asking for 5 years of information on a short schedule. And I don't know how, I don't know how anybody's going to come up with 24 hours notice to come up with a compilation of things for the past 5 years. And I notice also, when you look on the internet and you want to see how the public's money is being spent on these contracts, there's a hodgepodge. Everything is divided amongst committees, council, non-council, DWP, public safety. There is no central database to look at all of the contracts the city is making with third-party providers. So that should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's go through this. There is one item, and it has A, B, C, D, and E. All right, so why don't we start with 1A?
1A relates to an agreement with Eberhard Roofing Incorporated for building maintenance and repairs. We should have staff from Department of Water and Power.
Who's here for 1A? Who is here for 1A?
Maybe we could hold it and move
All right,
on
we'll
to the
hold
next.
1A. Okay. All right, 1B?
1B relates to an agreement with SmartSync Incorporated for automation meter infrastructure. And Madam Chair, one of the previous speakers had mentioned that the wrong reports were placed on this council file. That matter has now been reconciled by the clerk's office. The right reports are on the council file, on the council file management system.
Okay. This is the Smart Sync agreement?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's SmartSync agreement.
Okay, great.
Good morning.
Right.
Yes. We propose to ask for that 134 contract to supply us from SmartSync the public communication to our meter reading. There are currently about 20,000 meters that we can remotely read it through the cellular telephone because there's a phone embedded in the meters. There are, those information coming back overnight so that we can post these on our website, and our, critical customers can view those information and operate, energy efficiency and do all this, self-manage their power consumption for us. So there are about 20,000 in the field, and this contract gonna, give us a 3 years public communication service. And it's about $5 per meter per month and flat, so there's no overage or underage, so just $5 we negotiated that rate. So we think it's a pretty, a good rate for the department to operate because every cell phone costs more than, $30, $40 monthly fee. So
simply put, tell me how it'll improve the department's operations.
It's very important we have data to when. Like a general, this building, we have a meter on it, and we know how do you operate, how do you consume energy. So that's the information is critical to us. When people ask us, do you know my operation? How do I turn on my equipment? With the meter has intelligence in it, every 15 minutes we record usage. So the information coming back to the department, we post on the web, shared by the engineers, by customers, and by managers to make financial decision on those consumptions.
So with this specific service, the people who use this data, it will enable them to be able to better manage
the energy consumption.
Okay.
So they can stay away those peak times, and that's part of our smart grid and the initiatives, so that we give information to our customers. And so there are about 3,000 critical care customers, the customer that cannot afford the power outage.
Right.
And the minute it has the outage, those meters will send back information saying, the power is out at that location. Then we can dispatch the people to fix those. That's very critical to our operation. and we run out of our service by end of this month.
I'm going to ask you, and I'll do this on the record, and you can report back
Okay.
in 15 days.
Okay.
Just anecdotally, it looks as if the department is entering into a new agreement with Smart Sync and related firms almost on an annual basis. And I would like to know if you can provide this committee with a full history of the department's agreements with Smart Sync. And I just want you to go back for 5 years.
I think I have this
Okay.
information
The
here.
rationale for each one of the agreements
Yes.
and the total expenditures?
Yes, I have here. And the second page is for the next item.
Madam Chair, you'd like for this to be provided thoroughly, though, at your next meeting in
Yeah,
15 days?
I won't
though?
be able to read it while I'm sitting here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
If I had known you were going to do that. Now we have it in advance of the next meeting. Well, you give a copy to the CLA.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is, I'll have you back in 15 days, and that'll give us a chance to review it and go through our own analysis.
Okay.
But that is the question that I wanted to pose to you.
Okay.
All right, so we'll,
Agendize.
back.
We'll continue it
Yeah.
for the next
Um,
upcoming meeting.
Did anybody get here on 1A yet? Is there anybody?
So we don't have anybody here.
Since, maybe I can put my questions on the record. Do you know, or does anyone know who was coming to report on 1A?
We can make a call to the department to see if we get a response. In the meantime, we can.
Is there, well, what I was going to say is, it's going to come back,
Okay.
it will come back anyway, and I can put my
Okay.
questions
Oh.
on the record.
Okay.
Would you like me to give you my questions, and then you or someone can come back in 15 days with the answers?
Yes, Anselmo Collins, Acting Director, Supply Chain Services.
Okay.
For Department of Water and Power. I'll be glad to take down the questions. If I can answer it, I will. More than
Okay,
likely,
great.
I'll jot them down and get back to you with
Great.
the answers.
And then what I'll do is I'll ask my deputy here to give you copies of the questions, so,
Okay.
yeah. What I'm asking on 1A is the Eberhard Roofing Agreement. If you would please outline the types of repairs on the John Ferrara building that this agreement provides, noting that the historic nature of this building, to what extent the department engaged the community with respect to the restoration of the building. If you can provide the committee with a visual representation of the changes and the upgrades that the building will undergo, and what your strategy is for involving not only the city council, but the public at large, and give me your strategic outreach plan. And if you can come back in 15 days with answers to those questions, that would be extremely helpful.
Okay, very well. We can do that.
So that was,
I don't know if you get copies of the board letter that was sent to our board. In there, it actually details the different improvements that we are looking at. These are mainly maintenance issues.
Yeah.
I can just cover it generally, but yet we'll get back to you in 15 days.
Okay.
One of the items is the replacement of the roof. The roof that is existing was installed approximately 15 years ago. So part of this contract involves replacing the roof of the building, as well as the flashing on the building. The second item that we are proposing to have in this contract is the repair to the granite podium. Basically, this is on the outside of the building, around the building. These are probably like 4x4 squares of granite. A lot of them are broken, so they're down to the point where they're actually, some of them elevated. That causes a tripping hazard, it's a liability. So part of this contract involves improving that. Another area is the Bridgestone replacement. This is the surface of the bridge that goes from this public street into the building. Same issue, needs to be fixed to make sure that we don't have any tripping hazards. The last part of the contract is for the resurfacing of the moat around the building. This has been around for quite a while. It's had several leaks. It's been fixed many times. So part of this contract involves resurfacing it to make sure we have a waterproof surface and there's no loss of water. So in general, those are the items that are being covered in
okay.
this.
And he's going to come back.
Yes.
Because the contract is not to exceed $8.03 million. And so I definitely want you to come back with some detail on that. Mr. Cardenas has joined us. Mr. Cardenas.
Yes, thank you very much.
What's your name again?
Anselmo Collins. I'm the Acting Director of Supply Chain Services for DWP.
McCollins,
Yes, Collins, Collins. First name is Anselmo.
Ansel.
Yes.
Like Ansel Adams.
Excuse me?
Like the guy Ansel?
Yeah, just want to know what they are. Yes, Anselmo.
All right, Mr. Collins, so we're talking about the John Ferraro building, which is the main headquarters for the Department of Water and Power,
That is correct.
and we're talking about moving forward, continuing to move forward on potentially an $8 million contract to obviously fix something that needs to be repaired and corrected, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But if we're contemplating selling that building, excuse me, not me, but if the current temporary manager of the Department of Water and Power has already announced that perhaps we should lease this out to somebody else, shouldn't we forego this and allow perhaps the future owner to take care of this kind of infrastructure issue?
I think that would be one strategy. I guess the way that we're looking at it right now is that these are improvements that are needed in order to ensure that we don't have a liability problem. Like I said, several of them are tripping hazards that potentially could make the department liable if somebody falls.
Sure.
As far as improvement on the roof, obviously, if we have any kind of leaks in the roof, you don't want it to get too far along the way, because then the repair costs would far exceed what we're estimating right now.
Sure, but there's a big difference between repair and overhaul, and it sounds like the $8 million is an overhaul, right?
It's a repair. It's pretty extensive, repair that we're doing to several areas. I couldn't give you the exact details in it, but obviously, the repair would be a lot less than if it's a total overhaul.
Okay.
But I think the question you're asking is probably better posed to our acting general manager, because I couldn't tell you what his plans are.
Okay, well, he was, apparently, unless they misquoted him, he was very public about that idea.
Correct.
And apparently, according to the press, he owns that idea. So maybe you ought to apprise him of some of the intricacies that are going on with the building, so that he can understand and perhaps be advised or advise the people that he tells what to do as to whether or not how he feels about this kind of infrastructure investment. Also, on the report back, I would like to know what the minimum repairs structure would be. This seems to be a medium to aggressive repair plan, and then also a complete overhaul plan, because it appears that this is not a complete overhaul plan. Okay?
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then if you're not the right person to make the report back, would you please?
Absolutely. I'll
Ensure
make sure
that
to have the
somebody-
right person here at the
Great.
next meeting to
Thank
report back. In 15 days, you said?
Yeah, it'll be 15 days.
Sure.
And also, as far as I'm concerned, Madam Chair, you're doing a fine job of answering our questions, because you're answering questions that you feel comfortable you have the answers to, and you're being honest with us that on certain questions you'll have to check with somebody else. That's exactly what I expect from anybody that actually addresses the elected policy body for the city of Los Angeles. So thank you for doing such a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that'll be back in 15 days, and then we've done number 2. And they're also coming back in 15 days. I don't know if you had any questions on 1B. I'm sorry, 1B, not number 2. This was the Smart Sync agreement. So then we will go on to 1C.
Madam Chair, when is the action dates for the items that were actually voted on by the Department of Water and Power Commission for the council to take action?
Well, we have a break here. Now, D&E have timeliness issues. And I did state in my opening remarks that I felt that the DWP Commission and staff need to respect the fact that council does have authority to oversee these items before the Board of Department of Water and Power Commission. And in scheduling, they need to take into consideration the 21 days that we need to have in the event that we do a 245. Now, unfortunately, in the case of D and E, we do not have that time. Our chief legislative analyst has spoken to me and told me that, I guess, when we get into it, we'll find out what the details are on the payment to be made to the insurance firm has to be done by this Friday. So,
Okay.
I don't think it's wise to continue to engage in this kind of behavior, since we all know 21 days is 21 days for a Prop 245. So now I said it for the record. I'm going to keep saying it until this kind of conduct stops. Now, let's go. So the issues before us, A and B will come back to us in 15 days. And I think maybe after you and I discuss C, we may reach the same conclusion that we want a report back in 15 days. Again, that detailed 5-year history of the agreements and the services between the department and the contractor.
Okay.
And then that we will bring that back too, because we need time to read it. And I do appreciate if you've brought something for C today, that's great, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we bought.
I can't read it while I'm sitting here in a
I'm
committee
sorry.
meeting. So, thank you,
Okay,
though.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
Okay.
C.
So C is pretty much the contract we try to enter into that for our regular meter purchase.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So annually, we install about 60 to 90,000 meters, electrical meters and water meters, and this contract is the supply for those meters. And the meters has some radio frequency on that, and they enable us to read the meter from the street curb rather than going back to the backyard to the residents and doing this. So it's also part of our initiative for smart grid and the AMI project. And those are the meters that it's a routine job. It's required. We need those meters, to do our business.
So again, just condense it for people who are listening.
Yes.
The specific purpose of this contract is,
The inventory, our regular meter stock, that we have to purchase this meter, and the meter in the fields are new custom come need a meter to install on their homes, and the old meters need to replace. This is the contract for.
now, just anecdotally, there have
Okay.
been, CLA gathered information that from customers of PG&E, smart meters and data collection associated with these modern meters haven't always interfaced very effectively. And as a result of that, at least in the PG&E cases,
Right.
the customers have complained about higher bills because of that difficult interface resulting in an inaccurate read.
Right.
Now, this is obviously a problem since these meters are intended to improve efficiency and
Right.
arguably reduce bills. Now, what do we need to do here to make sure that that doesn't happen in our DWP service area or catchment area?
This meter is a different version with the PG&E. We take a little bit slower than our PG&E going forward because they're using two-way communication. We're still doing the radio frequency. These meters are reliable. And moving forward, we have a team in the department from different organizations. We analyze and research and do pilots with new meters, make sure what we put in the future will work in the field. And these ones are very reliable, being on the market, I think about 15 to 20 years. And we've been used these, and other utility being used these. It's a generation lower than the current one than PGE, but I think it's a much safer take.
So you went for the reliability.
Yes, yes,
Now,
ma'am.
and do you know, and if you don't, you can report back,
Okay.
how Itron was selected for this contract?
Oh, it's through the bidding and it's through the, we have AMI and the smart grid team. Together we, have meetings, weekly meetings, and we look at the different, technology. And then, we're going forward with this, purchase. We have everybody, power system, customer service, and IT people all buying into what we're gonna do for those meters.
Okay, just like with the previous contracts we discussed, A and B.
Yes,
Again, I want you to come back and go back over the past 5 years
Yes.
of Itron.
yes.
Total amount expended and services provided, so that we can do a comparative analysis on that, okay?
Yes, ma'am. It's here and,
Okay.
okay,
All right, great.
Thank you.
Mr. Cardenas may have some questions for you.
okay.
Yeah, this contractor, how did they fare when it came to their MeeBee-Weebee outreach and their effectiveness? Or is there even an opportunity in this case for them to actually have that kind of outsourced support for this contract?
We are engaging them to get going with that. Currently, this contract does not have MeeBee-Weebee. It's strictly material. And in the past, material kind of, they're kind of not doing this. But we kind of engaging them, say, hey, the economy is bad in area, and we need to develop jobs to help local. And moving forward, they will consider that, and we really gonna, work with them.
In what format are they documenting the responses to those requests? How are they documenting that?
Oh,
Are
that-
they just verbally telling you we've been trying, or are they going to document it with actually responding and writing, explaining the efforts that they made? Hopefully they have success, and if they had success or not, so they can justify how hard they tried.
I have my purchasing director.
Sure.
Good morning, once again. Typically, when we have contracts where we have identified that there's a subcontracting opportunity, our contract compliance office, which is under my jurisdiction, does an analysis of past contracts and also the industry to find out if in fact there's subcontracting opportunities. Once again, like George mentioned, normally on materials contracts, we don't have it because it's not a service, it's just a material they're delivering to us, or they're selling to us. However, if we do have subcontracting requirements, that is stipulated in the specifications, and part of what the vendor is supposed to do is go through a good faith effort. It's a series of steps that they need to take
Great.
to ensure that they're doing what they need to outreach to the proper groups.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I understand how the department is handling that last part of what you said in that communication of that maintenance of effort. Are we documented by forms that they check off and/or
Yes.
emails or letters on their letterhead explaining the steps and the dates in which they tried to outreach?
Yes, we do have requirements that when a vendor is required to show that they made the effort in subcontracting, we have forms that they need to fill out. Part of these forms document exactly who they've contacted, how they contacted them, did they work with any organizations that may be able to aid them in identifying some of these potential subcontractors. All that information is provided to the Department of Water and Power, and prior to making any recommendation, it is reviewed. The requirement is that you have to pass the good faith effort in order to get a contract. The way we have it is it's 100, total 100 points. You have to get a minimum of 75 points to pass the good faith effort. So all that is reviewed by the department prior to us, staff, prior to going to our board, recommending award of any contract.
So the bottom line is, there is a process.
Yes, there is, sir.
That process is supplemented with documentation, verifiable documentation.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
All right, great. All right, this, again, come back in 15 days. And you can speak with my deputy to, the question is basically the same for all three.
Yes.
Expenditures, number of times contracted, and basically the 5-year history.
Yes, and we've
On the
put all that
18th.
together already, but
Great.
we'll follow your directions even better, but I think
Yeah.
we've got it covered already.
Yeah, and then going back to A, also the outreach to community, because it's 8.03, it's an iconic building.
Yes.
Need to know, what you've done in terms of the conservancy community, architectural community, just the community of people who care about this building.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to D, which is Karcher, right?
Yes. DWP report relative to payment of insurance premiums to Karcher Campbell and Associates Insurance Brokerage. Staff from DWP.
Okay.
My name is Avery Neiman. I'm the Senior Risk Manager at the Department of Water and Power. Last name is spelled Neaman. And we have Joan Sormonte, our account executive from our insurance broker, on this placement with us today.
Good morning.
You can pull the mic over.
Good morning.
Did you want to make a report?
Could I answer any questions? I wasn't
All
really.
right, that's fine.
I'm
Fairly-
sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. This is a fairly standard insurance premium payment for, I guess, $7.2 million. What other types of coverage does the department get for this plan?
For this particular coverage is a broad coverage for all third-party bodily injury and property damage. So it covers, it's called excess liability. It covers any types of liability other than that which is specifically excluded, of course, and the other types of coverages that we do buy. It covers pollution, it covers electromagnetic fields, automobile liability. It is very broad, but of course it excludes workers' compensation and other statutorily required coverages.
Now, it's my understanding that the department has a deadline to meet, and that's why the department has asked for this matter to be heard sooner rather than later. What is your deadline?
Well, I'd like to state that we had this item on the Board of Water and Power Commissioners' agenda for the 6th of this month. We were very well aware of the 21-day waiting period, for lack of a better word. That meeting, unfortunately, was canceled beyond our control, and thus we are in a position where we have the coverage expiring tomorrow at midnight. An additional factor that a lot of the coverage is in Bermuda. on our wildfire placements. They are closed for a holiday today and tomorrow, so we did actually have to bind coverage yesterday.
Do you know why that meeting was canceled?
No,
Is there
I do not.
anybody here who knows?
No, I do not.
Apparently, there was an issue with a quorum for commissioners.
Okay, why don't we work on that kind of an issue, should it arise when items are on the agenda that are time-sensitive, and then the commission meeting gets canceled due to a lack of quorum.
Okay.
Are they in a similar situation like we are, where they can still hold a meeting with one or, not a quorum, but then just goes forward as a recommendation?
You know, I'm not certain what their particular provisions are with
Let's
respect
find
to
that
that.
out, because we didn't need to be in this situation. We could have avoided it. Mr.
Okay.
Cardenas?
It's my understanding that the Department of Water and Power is well aware of their abilities and latitude and authority on actually hosting a meeting that actually garners a quorum. Unfortunately, and you can tell them I said this again, when I chaired this committee and I was monitoring a particular matter, we rejected that matter. And they were telling us that we really shouldn't reject it, not so much on the substance, but we shouldn't reject it because time was of the essence, and they really were having a problem getting a quorum, and if we rejected it, then that might jeopardize the policy of the matter. So we rejected it anyway, and it was the right thing to do. The council as a whole rejected it. And then, lo and behold, they were so interested in getting that matter done, the Department of Water and Power actually utilized their authority, and within the Brown Act rules, one of their members was still within the city of Los Angeles, but was going to be at her place of business. So what they did is, knowing that, they posted at her place of business, at that address, that she was going to be part of the quorum. And she was able to attend the meeting via telephone and get connected via telephone, satisfying the Brown Act requirements. My point to everybody in this room at the Department of Water and Power, when the Department of Water and Power is motivated to have a matter handled in a timely manner, they do exercise their ability and authority and go out of their way to make sure it happens. So the bottom line is, as far as I'm concerned, having seen the Department of Water and Power exercise that legal authority and ability when they feel like it, all I can hear right now is excuses. I'm not upset at you, you're just the messenger. You are not the board, you don't administrate the Department of Water and Power, but obviously you're now before the ultimate body that makes decisions once we choose, if we choose, to 245 a matter and then hear it under our jurisdiction as the elected body within the city. So the bottom line is this: the fact that we have to dispose of this matter within the next 24 hours or so is a fact. But the fact that they could not get a quorum and they knew that this was one of the matters that was going to fall into that category, they could have gone out of their way and exercised their right and authority to actually garner a quorum on a one-item agenda and dispose of this item so that it wouldn't be before the city council with such limited time.
I agree with that, and I'll pass the word up my chain of command, certainly.
You can pass it on or play the tape. Doesn't matter to me.
Let's also memorialize what we discussed today in the form of a motion so that we can make sure that we convey it in written form on part of the official record to the DWP Commission and management staff so that they're very clear about how they can continue to deal with their day-to-day ministerial actions, even if they don't have a technical quorum.
Okay.
They certainly can figure out a way to do this so we don't continue to be put in this situation again.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
this is a situation that seems like it may have been constructed.
Would you like to include that in the communication that goes to council tomorrow with
Yes,
respect to this
absolutely.
issue? Okay,
Absolutely.
urging the board to handle
Yes.
the quorum issues, okay. We'll also request that department council be present in council tomorrow when this issue comes up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. And again, we'll forward this without recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Last one is E.
Department of Water and Power report relative to the issuance of $155 million revenue bonds to finance three renewable energy projects.
Hi, my name is Peter Nguyen. I'm with Financial Services Org Finance Division,
Okay, go ahead.
and we are asking authorization to issue up to $155.5 million of the qualified energy conservation bonds and the clean renewable bonds to finance certain renewable projects. In this particular case, 2 solar projects. One is Pine Tree Solar, Adelanto Solar, and a Pine Tree expansion, a wind expansion project. The reason this is the deadline is for the bond issuance is important or critical to us is because when the state allocated the qualified energy conservation bonds, it imposed a deadline on August 24th. The bond deal must be closed. We have requested an extension, a 3 days extension, because we have looked at our timeline and we couldn't do it until the 25th, and they did respond and extended our deadline to August 27th.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of quick questions. These are renewable portfolio standard projects, right?
I would,
RPS.
yes.
Green energy
Yes.
projects.
Okay, green projects.
Renewable energy,
Are they
yes.
being supported in any way by the energy cost adjustment factor?
In these particular projects, okay, there are 3 projects here being supported by these bonds. One of them is the Pine Tree Wind Expansion Project. It is scheduled to be completed by the end of June of
No, let me make
2010.
my question simpler than that. You know, the energy cost adjustment factor that we just went through the whole
Yes.
process. Is any of that money flowing into any of these projects?
My answer to that would probably be yes.
Okay, can you tell me to what extent, and can you break it down?
The reason I said that is because for the 3 projects, the cost to the 3 projects for the first 5 years is going to run us about $3.6 million in debt service. And beyond that, including the repayment principal, it will run us about $13.9 million.
So the reason I'm asking that is I wanted to know how much debt obligation this will add to the energy cost adjustment factor and whether or not the current fund can support this. And does this create the need for a future rate adjustment to support this new obligation?
Not in the near future.
But what does that mean, not in the near future? It sounds like maybe in the more distant yet possibly near future, yes. So break that down for me.
I guess the reason I said it's not in the near future is because one of the projects is already completed, so we're focusing on the other 2 projects. For the first 5 years, the debt service is going to be very minimal. We're talking about $3.6 million in supporting all 3 projects.
Yeah.
Now, going after that, we start funding the repayment of the principal, so it'll be slightly different in terms of debt service. So that's why I say not in the near future.
Mr. CLA, what are the ramifications of us holding this in committee until the next committee meeting?
Your deadline to act up or down on this is August 17th. Of course, they have their deadline as well, too. You can hold it.
What is their deadline?
August 25th now? Is that
August 24th to close the bond deal.
August 27th?
Okay, and then
I
when's
thought
our,
you got a 3-day extension to the 27th.
Yes, but our schedule calls for the closing on the 25th. So they just granting us extra 2 days.
okay, because I don't know that I'm comfortable, I'm not comfortable voting affirmatively on this today, because I want some very specific answers to my questions, and it would entail you doing some greater research. So I'm going to just put them on the record, then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Carvis, okay?
Sure.
All right, so again, for the record, the questions I have are the following. I want an outline of the purpose of this extensive bond issuance and the projects that it intends to support. I want confirmation that these are RPS projects. I want to know whether funds will be supported by the ECAF in any way. Because the report does not specifically mention ECAF, but for me, it is very important to peel back the layer and see if any of this flows through the energy cost adjustment factor. Because I am concerned about increasing our debt obligation and whether that adds to the ECAF in creating an even greater burden, and whether or not on the ECAF. You said it solves a problem for the immediate future, and you don't, it's fine. What I'm getting at is this. It sounds to me that we're just stumbling into laying the groundwork for future rate adjustments to support this obligation. I'm not willing to stumble into that and do that, knowing that all I'm doing is being forced to act upon a created deadline and go, okay, I'll vote for it, knowing full well, or at least being concerned that all I'm doing is setting us up again for another ECAF battle, not yet understanding clearly why are we in this situation and where the money is flowing from and how it will be spent. So if your earliest deadline is either August the 24th plus 3 days, it seems like there's sufficient time for us to have you come back with a good report CLA has a chance to review.
Without council approval, we may not proceed with this. The reason for that is,
You can
with
answer
council,
the questions.
I'm sorry,
You
once
can answer
council,
my questions.
What you're saying, you can't answer those questions at this moment.
Yeah,
It
we're gonna
is-
have you
You'll
come
go
back.
and get the information.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
now you're trying to tell us that we have a deadline issue?
no.
Practical deadline issue?
can
The
you answer
reason,
my questions and come back next week with answers? And then we can proceed one way or the other? There shouldn't be anything wrong with answering the questions.
okay.
That's all I'm asking.
Next week, not 2 weeks.
Well, whatever,
Yeah.
we'll work it out, okay?
Okay.
But I need for you to answer these questions on the record
Mhm.
so that we can make an informed decision. And for me, the essence of whether I vote for this or against this is if it increases our obligation and lays the foundation for yet another rate adjustment, I'm probably gonna vote against it. So I want, I'm be honest with you and, straightforward, and just come back with the information, and let's work with the CLA and get our analysis done and see where we stand. Okay, Mr.
Okay.
Cardenas.
This is a bond sale, which means that this kind of transaction, once you have the approval, doesn't take place in one day, correct? As far as the preparation, the setup, and then the sale,
It takes time, yes, under normal circumstance,
under
yes.
normal circumstances.
For this particular deal, is because the deadline is imposed on August 24th. So we are setting up, and we received the board approval of the package. We are waiting for the city council approval before we can send out documents and work with the third parties and the rating agencies and the investor presentations.
Okay. Are you familiar with the fact that there are some pretty large firms that are within your pool that you select from that are actually in a very embarrassing lawsuit with the city of Los Angeles and municipalities throughout the country? And some of those firms, for example, are Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and I'm not sure Barclays is involved in that. I don't think so. And it appears that the senior lead, the organizations that appear to be chosen to senior lead this deal are Barclays, Bank of America, and Merrill Lynch. What is the intended titles of each of these firms in the transaction?
Yes, they're going to be helping, leading the transaction. And the reason for that is we were working with Bank of America Merrill Lynch in trying to do a private placement for the CREPs that were allocated to us back in January. We received a CREP of $29.9 million to support the Pine Tree Wind Expansion Project. At the time, these CREPs we could only do as tax credit bonds. And tax credit bonds, there are very few players in this area, and Bank of America is one of the biggest and probably most competitive. So when we talked to them and tried to feel for the private placement of these tax credit bonds, that's when they brought to our attention about the qualified energy conservation bonds that's being waived by those received and did not want to participate, and the state had a pool of $192 million to be reallocated. However, with that said, there is a very tight deadline from the moment that was brought to our attention and the deadline. So we immediately start working to file for these qualified energy conservation bonds. That's when Barclay, they have certain people who are knowledgeable in these qualified energy conservation bonds, and basically stepped up and helped us prepare these applications and a way to prepare it. For example, one of those would be we could have prepared it in a single package or 5, 6 separate packages if we would apply for 5 or 6 projects. In this case, we ended up applying for 5 projects in the sum of $172 million requested. Now, with their help, on May 26th, that's when the CITLAC, I believe that stands for California Debt Limit Allocation Committee, and their committee on May 26th allocated $131 million to the Department for the Qualified Energy Conservation Bonds. So with their efforts and involvement, that brought to our attention and helped us got to that point, and that's why we're working with them on this particular deal. I think it is more of a circumstance that they contribute a very meaningful way. And
Thank you for pointing out their involvement and their assistance, and that assistance is basically common practice in the industry, correct? They work with or deal with a big entity like a Department of Water and Power or the state of New York or the city of Los Angeles or the city of Chicago or what have you, and they offer those services to prove that they are a quality organization that's looking out in the best interest of their hopefully potential client, and then hopefully that leads into them getting the business. Is that pretty much the standard practice in the industry?
In normal type bond deals, for example, like Build America bonds, where we can issue and to finance practically any type of projects, I would say yes, because it's so broad. However, this is so specific. Even at that moment, it was still considered as tax credit bonds. Until the end of March, when President Obama signed a Jobs Act, that's when he changed the rule on this and allows the QECBs, in this case the Qualified Energy Conservation Bonds and the Clean Renewable Energy Bonds, to be sold as similar to Build America bonds, where we receive direct subsidy payment. And here is the attractiveness of this specific type of bonds. In a net basis, we are going to receive about 62% of the coupon that we pay. So in addition to that, the IRS also has pretty lax rules in this for this type of bonds. They encourage early payment while you can maximize the low rate by encouraging you to establish the sinking funds. So if you establish sinking funds, for example, in this case, if we we already get back 62% of the tax credits. So assuming for a second, let's say we're paying 1.2%. They would allow us, the sinking fund, to invest and earn up to for maybe 4.5% without any arbitrage penalty. So it's really favorable in this type of bonds. For example, we have run our runs, the numbers, and if we do a tax-exempt bond, in this case, for similar term, it will run us about 3.68%. If we use the structure that's allowed by IRS, we're going to run less than 2%, in this case 1.8%. In addition to that, if we compare to the tax exempt and take full advantage of this sinking fund method, which we intend to in every way, we will have a present value savings of up to $25.2 million. This is just for a sum of $150 million.
So
it's very
the bottom line is, what you're pointing out is, through this taking advantage of the old laws, the new laws, the IRS flexibility in this arena, we are able to save the ratepayers $25 million on a transaction that otherwise would have cost them $25 million more. I
Yes.
applaud you on that, and I can see that you're very intricately involved in the technical aspects of this. But at the same time, when I look at the list of the firms, and oddly enough, it was Bank of America who actually raised their hand and said, mea culpa, I think we've done some bad things, and we'd like to basically turn state's evidence and then tell all so that we can perhaps have a little bit of leniency on the entities, the municipalities that are gonna sue us. But even though Bank of America has been generous with their efforts and tipping us off and on what is out there for us and how we could collectively, through this decision-making, save the ratepayers $25 million, I still don't understand why we should reward Bank of America when, on the other hand, they were doing some very bad things to the city of Los Angeles. So what is the structure of this particular deal? Is it going to be Barclays who's going to lead the deal? Is it going to be Bank of America, co-senior leading the deal? What are the titles of these three firms?
There are only two firms. Bank of America, Merrill is one firm. I guess Bank of America bought
Well,
Merrill
Merrill
Lynch.
Lynch happened, when they were one firm, they did some bad things and they're being sued as well. So Bank of
Yeah.
America has assumed their liabilities and responsibilities as well.
Yeah. If I might also add something, you know, as we aware that the credit market is still, you know, it has gotten better, but still very tight. If we do a formal RFP, one thing is for certain, we will not get any response. Now, in January, B of A did step up and provide us $344 million to support the power bonds for a term of 2 years. And they, along with RBC, in addition, regarding Barclays, in February, they did step up and provide $137.5 million of credit facility to support the Water 2001B subseries. I believe it's B, I'm not sure the numbers. But these two firms did step up and provide us the liquidity that we need in a time that we would have a very difficult time of obtaining in the marketplace.
Again, that's nice. If my neighbor breaks into my house and then later on they lend me their car, it doesn't negate the fact that they broke into my house. It's just because they do one nice thing tomorrow doesn't mean that I forget about the fact that they've done something egregious to me in the past. And that's what I'm talking about with Merrill Lynch and Bank of America. So my question to you again is, what is the title responsibility of Barclays Capital and the other firm in this deal? Who's the senior lead on this deal?
There are two senior leads in this deal. That's Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Barclays.
So they're going to co-senior.
Yes.
Are there any other firms involved in this deal? Are they going to handle it? It's not a big deal.
Yes.
$155 million is not a big deal
Yes.
out there in the bond world. So right now, there's only two firms in the pool that are going to handle this deal.
Correct. And there are co-managers. There are four of them. One is Wells Fargo, Stone & Youngberg, Ramirez & Company, and Loop Capital.
I'm looking at the firms that we're having these lawsuits with. So Loop is not involved in any lawsuits with us, or that particular lawsuit situation. Neither is Ramirez, and Stone & Youngberg is not. So Bank of America Merrill Lynch is the firm that actually has that other issue with the city. The reason why I'm taking this time, and thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, is because it's very embarrassing when the public sees the left hand doesn't tell the right hand what is going on. We had some very open discussions, coincidentally, over the last 30 days on the City Council floor. Publicly noticed meetings, publicly televised meetings. It actually garnered some press, and the bottom line is, it appears to me that the Department of Water and Power certainly didn't approach any of the council offices asking us if we had any issues with Bank of America or Merrill Lynch on an upcoming transaction. So what I want to let you know from here on out is you need to put your ear to the ground and find out what's going on with the city as a whole, especially when it comes to service providers that we tend to cross-utilize. Department of Water and Power and the City of Los Angeles, the Port of Los Angeles, our other proprietors like the airport, LAWA, which is our airports, et cetera. We're a big city with a lot of moving parts, but we look really ridiculous when we're not upfront and honest about why we would go ahead and use a firm as a senior lead. I'm not saying that that firm doesn't have any talent. I'm not saying that that firm doesn't have anything to bring to the table. When you use a firm as a senior lead, that's the plum responsibility that all of these firms try to gravitate toward, and that's what they're working toward. And for them to treat the city the way they did, and for them to violate their fiduciary and legal responsibilities so far as it seems they may have done, it is very important for us to be cognizant of that and not be rewarding these firms that title and that opportunity when perhaps they are not treating the city as a whole the way they should, both in a legal and fiduciary responsibility manner.
I
So
agree.
were you aware of these lawsuits?
I was not aware of these lawsuits.
Let
but
me give you the
yeah.
official list that was provided to us by the CAO of Los Angeles about the firms, the ones that are highlighted in blue, not the ones that are highlighted in red, just the ones that are highlighted in blue. And if you'll see Merrill Lynch, when they were their own firm, they're highlighted in blue. When you look at B of A, they're highlighted in blue. And yet Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, are actually going to senior lead a deal for part of the city family, which is the Department of Water and Power. I understand you explained very articulately the history of this particular deal, the uniqueness of it, the specialty of it, and the opportunity to save the ratepayers $25 million. I get that. Yet at the same time, apparently, no one was willing to articulate to anybody else in town that we were going to be rewarding one of these firms that actually, and the thing about B of A that's unique about all those firms on the list, B of A already raised their hand and said, we did something really bad. Now we're talking to the lawyers about how bad it was and then what the consequence is going to be. But they already admitted that they did something very bad.
Okay, great. All right, and then you'll come back with answers with
Next week.
respect to the ECAP issues that I raised too. So we will ask the CLA to work out dates so that we can hear that, and possibly, I don't know if we'll be able to hear D at the same time.
Yeah, we'll work something out in terms of
Okay,
their
great.
scheduling issues.
All right,
Madam Chairwoman, so the other report backs were 15 days or less,
yeah.
correct? So if they're ready
Yeah.
with that information by next week, then it potentially they can be heard as well, right?
Right.
As long as those,
Right.
they're ready to answer those questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
they've got the answers to our questions, absolutely.
Yes.
All right, that marks the end of our agenda, and now this is the time for public comment, and we have one card from Dr. Williams.
Do we have to listen to him?
Yes, I think it's okay.
I'll stick around. I got
Okay.
2 more minutes.
It's actually a DWP comment. Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno. Whatever happened to strategic planning? And what is the relationship of these various solar wind projects to the strategic plan? Or as some people would call it, the long-term strategy. And where did Huron go? Because as part of the same agenda at DWP, or at the Board of Water and Power, they considered giving Huron another contract for 3 years. So might say, is there a strategic plan? That's number one. Is it finalized? Because there is a draft online. Bruckner presented a long-term strategy, which then morphed into a strategic plan. And so we don't know where DWP is going, where the Board of Water and Power is going, and how these individual projects relate to the overall plan. Because I can guarantee you that ECAF covers everything in the power sector. So if there is a bond issue, if there's not enough revenue to pay for that bond, hey, you jack up the revenue. And remember that it's revenue coming from the net surplus revenue. Net surplus revenue. Oh, that tells me that's profit, isn't it, in most cases? So if they're making a profit on the rates that they are now using, you know, where's a fixed point? This morning I came up with a phrase. Let's all be on the same page. But in order to be on the same page, you must give us a page. if I have no page, I can't be on the same page. So, transparency, accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Okay, that marks the end of our public comment period, and no further business before this committee, so the meeting is adjourned.
Pretty much all except D.